we are standing on the lands of First Nations people, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to acknowledge them as the custodians of this land, acknowledge their customs, traditions and rights pertaining to being the custodians of this land, and also acknowledge the part that has been played by my ancestors in unfortunately making things far more difficult for First Nations people of both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent for over 200 years in Australia. I'm doing this not only because I have failed to do so in past recordings, but also because yesterday was Australia Day. Now, for a lot of people, Australia Day is something that's celebrated just because it's a public holiday, and very little thought is given to what it actually represents for the First Nations people of this country. In 1700, Captain James Cook made landfall in Botany Bay, New South Wales, and in 1788, Arthur Phillip came back and began colonisation, or from the First Nations point of view, invasion and genocide. Here we are in 2019, and we still have an appalling situation for First Nations people. They have very little to no representation in Parliament, a staggeringly high rate of representation within the homeless, the unemployed, and a very low life expectancy due to medical conditions, some of which is associated with alcoholism, but considering the hard lot they have, I would understand why anybody overlooked, abused, and sometimes vilified would turn to drink. Now, on top of that, I myself have Aboriginal heritage. I am 1/8 Indigenous on my father's side, but I cannot tell you the people or nation I belong to, as unfortunately the government do not wish to help sort out the disputes that are going on in that part of Tasmania, as to do so would mean having to actually pay out compensation and acknowledge their part in making the history of this country darker and more bloodied than it needed to be. The stolen generation was acknowledged, it's true, by a Liberal National Coalition government some years ago, or at least an event in which Aboriginal children were taken from their parents and put into Christian missions. But that was one instance. And a lot of people overlook the fact that it happened many times after that and many times before, and that simply acknowledging one instance of mistreating a people, saying sorry for it, and doing little to prevent it happening again, to say nothing of overlooking all the rest of the barbarity in the history, doesn't actually put things right. So I, in this video, would like to say that apart from refusing to celebrate Australia Day, or Invasion Day as it would be better known, would like to, on behalf of my non-Indigenous ancestors, apologise for all the wrong that has occurred. I know this doesn't fix things, but I am ensuring that my children are aware that the history of this country goes back far further than 200 years, that the First Nations people have definite rights that should be acknowledged, and that moving forward, if we do not remember our past and learn from it, if we don't work with all people who live here, then we are doomed to repeat mistakes, to say nothing of the fact that by working together, we will have a far stronger and far more harmonious future.